Welcome to Contemporary Black Voices, where we take on the important and interesting issues in the Black community. I am the writer Fred, the host of this show, and with me are my distinguished fellow team members, Professor Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell, New York Times bestselling author Caleb Alexander, and businessman and community leader, and my nemesis, Chris Dawkins. Next month, on December 25th, Oprah Winfrey, Steven Spielberg, Quincy Jones, and Scott Sanders' musical version of The Color Purple will hit theaters throughout the country with the film adaptation of the 2005 Broadway adaptation from the original movie, The Color Purple. With this new release, obviously there will be a great deal of discussion of the good and bad of the portrayal of Black Americans in the year 1909. And the one that will generate the most discussion will be the role of Mr. or Albert, played by the iconic actor Danny Glover. Mr. Glover was one of the early Black actors in Hollywood that eventually opened the doors for many Black actors to include Denzel Washington, Samuel Jackson, and others. Mr. Glover is still active in a career that has included over 50 films. We know of him as an actor, but very little about him as a man. So I have asked his brother, Martin Glover, who has his own company, Rio Productions. He's a producer on many stage sites to join today and discuss his very successful brother on the screen, as well as his activism in national as well as international social and political causes. Martin, welcome to Contemporary Black Voices.
Well, thank you, Fred. That was a great introduction you gave me. All the accolades. I love it. Okay. Glad to be here. Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. There's a piece from Paul Robeson's book I want to read before we get into the discussion. It goes, in the early days of my career as an actor, I shared what was then the prevailing attitude of Negro performers, that the content and form of a play or film scenario was of little or no importance to us. What mattered was the opportunity, which came so seldom to our folks, of having a part, any part, to play on the stage or in the movies, and for the Negro actor to be offered a strong role. Well, that was a rare stroke of fortune indeed. Later, I came to understand that the Negro artist could not view the matter simply in terms of his individual interests, and that he had a responsibility to his people who rightfully resented the traditional stereotype portrayals of Negroes on stage and on screen. And after that, Paul Robeson never took a role that he saw as being a negative to Black Americans. So, Martin, let me start with overall, the entire movie, Color Purple. Do you think that was a dysfunctional, negative portrayal of Black America?
In some senses, I do. In some senses, it was portrayed as. I mean, we have to look at. I wasn't around in 1909. Okay, so I don't know what was happening back then. But there was some dysfunctional, as we have it today. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes, what I think is that we look at movies. I look at movies as an art. Okay, I look at movies as an enjoyment to take myself out of the reality of some things that happens in life. You know what I'm saying? And that was, I think, at a time when Color Purple came out and Dan's role, it was a movie to me. It was a great performance because I know. I know Mr. Glover. I know my brother. He's not that kind of person. So to me, it was a performance that he has done all his life, that he prepared himself. Now, the topic matter of it, Color Purple, like, I don't know. I mean, it's like, should he have done that role? What did that role manifest into later on in life to him?
Yeah.
It did a lot of things because he you do roles, and I understand what Paul Robeson says, but sometimes, and it's like, we try to do roles to get on another platform, so he can be, I mean, and we'll get later talked about what this role did for him, as in the other movies, Lethal Weapon, Witness, and how it made a platform for him so he could speak about all the other injustices. So sometimes it takes one thing to substantiate another thing. You know what I'm saying? It takes, you know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Did has he ever regretted that role?
no, no. He's never regretted because he sees it as part of his craft.
Yeah, because I know years ago, there was a lady in Pasadena told a story about how this one lady saw Danny Glover in the airport and went up to him and wanted to start beating on him because of the role of Mister. And I think he played it so well that you lost Danny Glover and you think of him only as Mister, as Albert in that movie.
Yeah.
So with that said, tell us about Danny Glover. Okay, tell us about the man. 'Cause
And the man,
You're-
well, let me just harp, and before I get in that, there are women that come up to him all over the world and be mad about him. I mean, there's a story
About that role?
about you know, we grew up in, my mother, God bless her, though, we grew up in the deep South. She grew up in the deep South. Like I always tell everybody, little town called Louisville. You missed the stop sign, you missed the town. That's my whole thing.
Yeah.
It was the port where the slaves came in, or they still have the auction block where the slaves came in on the southern part, because of the southern part of Georgia. So to understand where you come from is to understand who he is.
Okay.
You know, moving up into this whole new environment in San Francisco in the 60s, we grew up in. So
Yeah.
it was a different change for him. And he had to grow up because my mother and father couldn't afford to have him. So they sent him and my sister back down to live with my grandma. And they were sharecroppers. My grandma was a sharecropper. My grandmother was a midwife, you know. So they moved back down there sent them back down there so she couldn't afford him because, you know, they couldn't get good jobs in San Francisco. Let's just put it like that. So he understood two reams of life, living in the South and living in San Francisco, which was every movement that came to California came to San Francisco. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you live in these two. And so that kind of like, I mean, there was an incident he always talks about when he went back down to Georgia, but this was later on in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, he was a teenager. And he went back down and he went into this restaurant. He was going to this restaurant. It was still segregated at this time. So I don't know if it was the 60s or the 70s.
Be
It was the time, 60s, early, maybe somewhere in the 60s. It was still segregated. And so he went to this restaurant and he was sitting outside there thinking about trying to make a change because he lived in San Francisco where there was always a change. So he's sitting up there thinking about it. He said, man, should I go in there and try to sit at this counter? And there's an old white dude next to him. Boy, I don't think you want to do that. You know what I'm saying? So he didn't end up doing it, right? But it's a small town, and my grandfather knew everybody in the town, so it got one to him. And he told him one time he went back and said, boy, you can go home two ways. You know, and we all know what that was. You can fly back home or you can get out in the casket. Okay, that was what it was. That's how it was. So it kind of changed him who he was. He told me that was the point that changed him. I mean, he drove a cab in San Francisco for most of his life. You know, I mean, the early years. He went to Lorraine Hansberry Theater. He started off as...
That was in New York?
No.
Well, they had one in San Francisco,
San Francisco.
too, yeah. And he started off with a lot of theater. And he built, I mean, before, I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers Places in the Heart with Sally Fields. Robert Benson saw him in an adaptation of adaptation of A Master Harold and the Boys with Broderick and Zeke McKay on, and said, that's my most for Sally Fields' Places in the Heart. And that's where he got his beginning. So, you know, and what he did was he used that platform. He went and did Color Purple. He went and did all these movies. He still does movies. And he used that platform to speak about what happened in Georgia, you know, in Louisville, Georgia.
Right.
And so that's how I kind of explained where he is in his career and how he does. So, okay.
Questions?
You know, you and I have had the discussion about Mr. But as I sit back and think about Mr., your brother did a phenomenal job talking about the tragedy of Mr. If you think back, his father was a son of a gun.
Yeah.
And he was mimicking a lot of what his father did. But to see the transformation of Mr. at the end,
Yeah.
when he worked on getting her sister back from Africa back home with her, and and we saw him softening. And when the girls got together, you saw him kind of stepping back and allowing them to re-engage as we saw them at the beginning of the movie. So it was a wonderful thing to where he was breaking like a curse of what fathers did to their children. So if he was here right here, I'd give him a high five on that because it was a phenomenal transition.
Question?
Yeah, I've got one comment and two questions. The first comment basically is to Fred. And,
Here we go.
Here we go. Get ready.
Let me move over this way.
Get ready. Get
no,
ready.
the thing is that when you talk about an actor, okay, I never fault basically the actor. And I understand like what he was saying and reading about Paul Robeson, but I never fault the actor because you have to build upon things to get to the places that we want to get to. So with what he did and the role that he played, I understand that. Because the one thing that I think that an actor always was judged by is, would you kiss somebody of the same sex? Well, now that's becoming more and more of a norm of people asking, but it's still the ultimate in acting as to if you are an actor, would you take a job that would kiss somebody of the same race?
6 degrees of separation.
Okay. The first question is, I know that, before
But
we,
before you do that, second session, we're coming back to that.
okay,
What you just said.
okay,
We're definitely coming back.
okay.
Go ahead.
And then the question that I'm sure all the viewers want to know about, will we see a new Lethal Weapon?
The second, are we coming back to that too? Let's go back to that one. I'm coming. Are we breaking or what? No.
No, we'll take a break in a couple minutes. We'll
Oh,
come
okay.
back there.
Do you want me to talk about the?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, what happens with it is, well, first of all, they were going to do another Lethal Weapon. They were going to intention it, but the director, the famous Dick Donner, passed away. And so they kind of like, with Lethal Weapon, because Dick was so, he did, tons of movies for Warner Brothers. They were only doing that because they owed him that. It was like, we kind of owe you that for what you brought to us. You look at, that's how Hollywood is. Like Clint Eastwood ain't did nothing and God knows how long, but he still got a stage, an office on one of the lots. And so, that's how they work. It's a great story about John Singleton, with Boys in the Hood. That changed generations. And John could walk off and go to Sony and do anything he wanted based on that. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what it happened with Lethal Weapon, and when Dick died, they didn't really owe him nothing no more. So they really didn't, and it was costing too much because Shane Black sold it to somebody else. He was the original writer. He sold it to somebody else, and it was too hard to do. It was too much money for Warner Brothers. But they would have, if Dick was still alive, they would have did it again. Yeah. He had wrote the script and everything. But go.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back the second session, and we're going to pick up on what Mr. Dawkins threw out here about how anything goes to build your career as long as your success. We'll be right back with Contemporary Black Voices.